As a spiritual abuse survivor, have you ever heard this question, why didn't you or they come forward sooner? It might be a question that you've heard or that you've asked yourself. And so in this video, I'm going to talk about why that question is a lot more complex than it seems and why people tend not to come forward right away when they've experienced spiritual abuse. My name is Dr. Felicia. I'm a licensed psychologist, and on this channel, part of my focus is the causes and recovery of spiritual abuse. So back to the question at hand, why didn't you come forward sooner? When an individual experiences spiritual abuse, it can be really hard, number one, to deal with the abuse, and number two, to even talk about it. And when I've talked with people who have been in these situations, they and you probably have gone through this too, maybe without even realizing it, is that you're analyzing what's known as a cost benefit ratio, right? So there may be benefits to coming forward right away about spiritual abuse, but there also are lots of costs associated with it. And so I'm going to go through, some of the questions that one might ask themselves before they come forward, or if they even make that decision. The first question is, will I be believed? Maybe you went through that when you had gone through spiritual abuse, but in spiritually abusive environments, they tend to be very strict hierarchies. And oftentimes, the priorities and needs of the leader are focused over those of the people that they're supposed to be leading and serving. And so, if you can imagine, when individuals have been through something really tough like spiritual abuse, they question, and rightly so, whether they're going to be believed, right? If you're in a situation or you're in an environment where everything is about that leader, making the leader be visible, catering to the leader's needs, making sure that the leader feels comfortable, and everybody else are seen as way beneath the leader in terms of their importance, then you're probably not going to be believed right away, right? And I want you to think about a situation where you've disclosed something that was really important and you were questioned and you weren't believed. Like, how did that feel? I can imagine that felt very disempowering. You probably felt shame, embarrassment, guilt. You probably even started to question yourself a little bit. And so I say this so that you can have some empathy and understanding for yourself as to why you probably had questions and doubts about coming forward right away. So, one reason that people might not want to come forward is exactly that. Will they be believed? Another question that people would want to ask, understandably, is that will they be punished, right? In spiritually abusive environments, people will not come out and say, we're going to punish you, right? No one's going to want to stay in an environment like that. But what you'll find in these environments is that if somebody comes forward and they tell the truth about something that happened, sometimes it is addressed, but then that person is retaliated against, right? And so people have shared countless stories about how they spoke up about something, and people took action against them, right? And it wasn't anything overt, it was more subtle things. So they felt like frozen out. So they stopped maybe receiving emails, they stopped getting invited to things. People would spread rumors about them. Maybe privileges that they had were all of a sudden revoked, like they couldn't get access to something that they used to have before. Little things like that. They're not little in their impact, but they are subtle, and they're done in a way to make that person question, number one, whether this is even happening to them or not, and then number two, whether they made the right decision. So people are, you and other people who've been through this are probably going to be scared of retaliation. Another thing that people often ask themselves before coming forward is, what am I going to lose? If you think about a spiritually abusive environment, people who are in the throes of spiritual abuse a lot of times have a lot of their resources coming from that spiritually abusive environment, and they're dependent on it. And so for many people, their income comes from that environment. They may be employed at that place. They may have all their friends at that place. They may be getting their education through a particular institution. And so coming forward isn't as simply as saying, hey, this happened. There may be their whole livelihood could be at stake. And so people really have a lot to think about before coming forward. They want to know that, hey, are my resources secure? A lot of times when we think about decisions, they're not as easy as just A or B. There can be benefits to making a particular decision, but there can also be a lot of challenges and costs associated with it, hence the cost benefit ratio that I mentioned before. And so, individuals probably have a lot, and they may have a lot to lose, right? It's easier if you can just say, hey, this happened and walk away. But for many people, their whole lives are tied up in this environment, in this institution. They may have a strong connection to that leader. The leader could be financially supporting them or people that are close to them. And so it's not an easy thing to just speak out against the leader, realizing that many things that you have and that you value could be taken away. And these aren't even only financial things, it could be social things. For some people, if they're raised in these types of environments, those are the only friends and family that they know. Okay. And then another question, too, that people might ask is that they want to know if they're going to be blamed for what happened. Something that really bothers me a lot about spiritually abusive environments and spiritually abusive people is they do a great deal of victim blaming. In fact, it seems almost like their default is to blame the victim for whatever happened. It's part of the dismissive nature of a lot of spiritually abusive people. And so, for individuals, when they come forward and they talk about things that happen, they are concerned, and rightly so concerned, about being blamed and being held responsible for what happened, even though it wasn't their fault, right? And so maybe the facts are undeniable, but they might be told, well, you invited that type of unwanted attention or inappropriate behavior, or you should have shown better judgment, or, you know, you are this type of person and this is why this happened to you, or, you can only see the bad in things and this is why you think this is a bad thing that happened. It can be very painful. So if you think about it, it's already difficult to come forward and speak out about something like that that's happened to you. And then on top of that, now you are either blamed for what happened, you lose a lot, you're punished for what happened. People might not believe you. So there's a lot at stake. And so I want you to think about that. And I want you to apply that to your situation. As we're hearing news about spiritually abusive leaders and institutions. And so sometimes when that news comes out, you can start questioning yourself, say, why didn't I come forward earlier? Maybe you never spoke up about it at all. Or you might hear other people questioning victims of spiritual abuse, especially those who are in the news, and saying, why didn't they come forward earlier? And so that can be very triggering. That can be very hurtful. And so instead of looking at it from that perspective, ask yourself these questions. Think about what people have to lose. Think about what the characteristics of the spiritually abusive environment that make it so hard and punishing and risky for people to speak up, and appreciate that and give yourself the grace and compassion that you need. So I hope this helps. I'd love to hear from you in the comment section. Have you ever been asked that question? Have you asked yourself that question? And how did you deal with that? So I'd love to hear from you all in the comments. And for a free consultation, you can go to my website, skillsetcounseling.com, click on the orange button for a free consultation, and I'll be in touch with you about setting that up. All right. I hope you have a wonderful day that is filled with peace. Bye-bye.